last meeting. There's three things in particular. Number one is a comprehensive educational facilities master plan can be seen as two distinct efforts. The first half being analysis, where we take a deep look into the existing conditions to be resolved in the development of a plan for the future. That's where we are now. This evening concludes the analysis portion. The synthesis portion is where we start to imagine what if. What if we were to do this? What if we were to envision the possibilities? So we're at the analysis. So what you can expect to hear from us tonight is you can hear the things that we know. Talk about data, talk about our findings. What you won't hear tonight, you won't hear us talk about expansion, new additions, new schools, closing schools. We're not there yet. That starts after this meeting. So with that, that was the first of the things that I'd like you to take. The second is that this has been a very rigorous process. We have had 54 meetings in 27 facilities. He stole my thunder. I was going to ask all of you to raise your hand who had participated, but you can see it was a good portion of this crowd. We believe there's over 1,000 people that have participated. We had 3 independent local architects, all experienced, some of whom are graduates from the St. Joseph School District, who know your buildings well to begin with, who went through every nook and cranny evaluating the facilities. We had a very rigorous rubric, an evaluation tool. Even though we had a lot of eyes evaluating the facilities, we used one standard comparison. So we had an objective evaluation of the criteria. So it was a very rigorous process. It's probably unlikely that any process has been this rigorous looking at your facilities. And the last thing that I want you to understand is what the data tells us. The data tells us what the community feels are the needs for these facilities, and I'll discuss that in a few moments. The data tells us what the community feels are the overarching items that need to be addressed as we put together a plan for the future. And the data also tells us that we have enough information, we feel good about what we need to know about these facilities to begin the development of a plan for the future. So again, going over the background, you know this, so I won't take much time on it. We gathered information. We have to start by collecting information. We collected existing planning documents, operation and maintenance cost, triage in 10. Triage in 10 is the district's word for their capital improvements plans. That's the list of capital work that's required for each of the districts over the next 10 years. The district puts that together by asking design professionals and sometimes contractors to take a look at their needs, estimate costs so they can use that for budgeting purposes. Triage in 10 or capital improvements planning are the way that prudent school districts manage the cost of facilities ownership. And then finally, energy costs. The evaluation occurred with a number of folks. First, it started off with community folks just like you. Anyone who had an interest was invited to participate, whether you were a resident of that school or you had children in that school, but we had community members, parents, students, I think, in some cases. That was one half of the equation. The other half was a professional team of experts, folks like the local architects, building principals, people who knew the building intimately, representatives from the Citizens Advisory Committee for the St. Joseph School District, Buildings and Grounds, Finance, Technology, Curriculum, and Instruction. We also had building engineer and lead facility staff. How did the facilities evaluations occur? Well, I may have mentioned there were 2 levels of assessment. The first level was done by the team of experts before the community walked through the buildings. And I should mention, Dan, do we have a chance to pull up the updated PowerPoint? If you have a chance, that would be good. I'm going to continue, and if you're ready, you can let me know. Anyhow, the how, before all the community members went through, the facility experts went through. People that had the technical expertise to determine whether or not your roofs were in good shape. We weren't going to ask everybody in the middle of winter to go up on the roofs, but we did ask these guys. We also asked you to come through. There were 92 questions that were used in total. The team of experts answered 72. You answered the final 20, the things that didn't need the technical expertise. In your first meeting, after your walkthrough, you sat down and developed a list of items that you felt were important to be addressed for each facility. Okay, we're going to shut this down momentarily. I'm going to continue to talk because we can catch up, because this is rehash, and they know what they did. At the second meeting, what happened was that the architects had put together cost estimates for those things that you had identified in the first meeting as priorities, and then they presented this back. Now you had the tools to go ahead and determine what was a real priority. You know, once a cost has been attached to an item, you can start to say, yes, this is the more important thing. So at the end of that second item, at the end of that second meeting, you had costs for a prioritized list of needs, and those were very helpful. We have used those costs in one of our cost comparisons. Up and running? Okay. Okay, very good. Hold on. So that was the second meeting. All right, very good. Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, if I can just get this to move forward one more time. I'm going to talk about the criteria that was used. There we go. All right. You may recall in the community engagement session number 6 that we discussed the criteria. We recommended using the Council of Educational Facility Planners International criteria that establishes as objective a standard as we know exists in determining the educational adequacy for existing school buildings. We want to measure, if we can, how well they function as schools. As part of your activity on that night, you evaluated that, you gave us some feedback, so the actual criteria we used was informed with the feedback that we gathered at one of these meetings. As you recall, we used 6 different categories to try and evaluate the function of the school. The site, how well it serves its circulation, its playgrounds, its green spaces, structural and mechanical features like the building structure, the building envelope, plant maintainability, how cost-effective is it to maintain its systems, building safety and security, is the building zoned properly, do we have control of our entrances, educational adequacy, do we have the program spaces that will allow us to conduct our programs, and then finally the education for environment. How conducive is our education environment to teaching and learning? So that gets us to the background, or it gets the background over, and now it's time to review costs. I mentioned that at the end of the second meeting, you had put together a list of costs proposed that you would propose as community members for each of the facilities. This is a chart of those costs. Now, it's really, the value of this chart really is only in showing you what those costs are. You can see that the costs for Central are much higher than they are for other facilities. And so there are limitations to what this chart tells you. One of the things that architects like to do is we like to bring things to common denominators so that we're not comparing apples to oranges, i.e. small buildings to big buildings. We want to bring them down to a common denominator so we can get a comparative value of cost effectiveness. And the way we do that is with cost per square foot. So when you take this chart and you change it and look at it as a function of cost per square foot, you see this. What you'll see here is we've got a red line. We have always included a line to identify the quartile that is either the most expensive or the least effective, and you'll understand that as we continue on. That red line then signifies that those 4 facilities have, on a cost per square foot basis, much higher costs based on the community work, based on the work that was proposed